Beacon Board of Education, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Mrs. Angela Everett. Here. Mrs. Gadsden. Excused. Mrs. Galbo. Here. Mr. Garnett.
Here.
Mr. Munoz.
Here.
Mrs. Patchen. Here. Mr. White.
Here.
Mr. Zoff.
Here.
Mrs. Thompson. Here. Would you like to review the fire exits?
I would. They're directly in front of our site, but behind the backs of the audience.
And would you like to introduce our workshop tonight?
Well, we have a lot of people here this evening for workshop presentations. Our first presentation this evening is with Anne Marie Corderoni and Mr. Martin Nemechek, and he's here to, along with Anne Marie, to speak about the athletic budget and some other good news. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nemechek.
We'll do the good news.
You want to do the good news first? Can we start with good news?
We can start
like
with
good
good
While
news.
we get the screen up? Okay.
Yes, so let us start with good news. Coach Henry, would you mind joining me up here, please? Come on down here, you three great student athletes of Beacon High School. At this time, at the last board meeting, we honored the three student athletes that went to the States verbally, but this time we brought them down to showcase them so you can see them. And Coach Henry is going to introduce them all and speak on their behalf. Coach?
I appreciate the opportunity to address the board and to present my athletes, for the most part because it's an indication that we had a pretty successful season. The three that I would like to introduce tonight are Paige Baisley, Terrell Davis, and Rayvon Gray.
Come on, so we can see you.
The junior class that we have on the track team is an amazing group of athletes. I'm going to be very disappointed or sad in a couple of years when they graduate. All three of the people that we have tonight are juniors. We have several other juniors that helped us win on the boys' side the league championship, the county championship, and the section Class B championship this year. And that's the first time that that's been done by Beacon. And the girls' team also has had the most successful year they've had in a couple of years. These three individuals, I'll start with Paige Baisley. She went to states this year, indoors, for the high jump. This is her fifth opportunity to have qualified for states, and she has qualified for states all 5 times. As a junior, she also is a former Section 1 Sportsmanship Award winner, as recognized by Section 1, which is a very nice thing to have a feather in her cap, in addition to her athletic accomplishments. This year, Terrell and Rayvon both qualified for the states. Terrell in the long jump, the triple jump, and the high jump. Rayvon in the long jump and the triple jump. And Terrell and Rayvon finished first and second in the long jump in the public high school championships. And it was the first time that we've had the top 2 spots on the podium at a state championship. So that was very nice to witness as well. And Rayvon, though Terrell unfortunately had a little bit of a hamstring issue at states, Rayvon was able to go to nationals the next week, and Rayvon at nationals came in 6th in the country in the triple jump, getting All-American status. And many colleges very interested in talking to our young athletes. So I have a presentation I'd ask Mr. Nemechek to give to each of the 3 athletes.
Paige, what we have here is a nice photograph of them at the States, and there's a caption underneath that states that Paige is a 5-time qualifier for the high jump New York State Track and Field Championship. Long jump of 23.1.5, and a new national triple jump of 48.6.5. Okay, Rayvon. Terrell is a New York State Public High School runner-up of a long jump of 22.7.5.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
And again, I'm really pleased to present these three fine young student athletes to the Beacon Board of Education and the community. Again, congratulations.
Okay. So now after that great news, we get to speak about the athletic budget presentation. So Mr. Nemechek and I are going to tag team a little bit. I will talk about the numbers and he will talk about the sports and the program. This just gives the board and the public just kind of a listing of all the teams that we have available in the Beacon City School District. This is the same number of teams that we had last year, so we're not increasing or decreasing on the proposed budget. I just want you to notice, too, in several of the columns in winter and spring, I've included a JV modified combination there. And as you know, we've sometimes had to offer either or, depending upon student participation, and Mr. Nemechek will talk about that a little bit later on. So the athletic budget, proposed budget for 15-16 is $393,000, an increase of $376,600. Some of the areas that we look to increase would be the contractual, which I'll explain in a minute, the material and supply area, and the BOCES area, which we'll explain. The rest will remain flat from last year. So just going down briefly, the coaching stipends, we had some very senior coaches not returning for next year, so the budget would be adequate to remain flat for 15-16. Same with the equipment. There was no major purchases that needed to be made there for athletics. And same for reconditioning, to be flat. Reconditioning are the helmets for football every year. The catcher's gear is cleaned and repaired, and there's the service contract for the fitness center. Material and supplies, we are increasing. As you know, every year we have, a budget presentation. Usually we ask athletics first to make some cuts in those areas, and last year we had Mr. Romanino do so. There are some things that we wanted to purchase for next year. There's some uniforms that need to be replaced. So we felt an area here where we could just add a little bit more there. In other is mainly contractual, so those are all the dues and the fees and the tournaments that need to be, and those prices have gone up there as well. And BOCES, we're just including a small increase, just a % increase for the officials. We do a cross-contract with Southern Westchester BOCES. And Mr. Nemechek will talk about it.
Some of the considerations that we're looking at were student participation. As was said earlier, what happens with the modifying JV, it depends on the number of student athletes. When I sit down and I spoke with some of the coaches, we determine if we should keep a developmental program and not classify student athletes up just to have a team. As you know, that's against the state regs, just to, they call, get numbers for a team. So what we do is we look at that, and we made a determination in some programs to where we will have a developmental at the modified level. Tournament participation, we'll take a look at that. Each time you go to a tournament, wrestling, volleyball, school districts, some of their booster clubs, they raise their funds that way. So every year, sometimes those increase. Then we also look at if it's a quality tournament for our student athletes to participate in. If it's something that they're going to benefit from, instead of just a couple, 2 or 3 of them, is it a whole team? Are we going to benefit? So we'll look at some of the fees and the travel aspect as we go down to transportation considerations. As you know, traveling back and forth is an expensive venture, and trying to find local tournaments or teams to participate and be competitive against would save the district some monies in that aspect, so we don't have to travel as far. But those are some of the areas that we might look at, that we're going to look at some considerations in.
And we like to also include some future considerations. So these are some major purchases and major repairs that we are looking at. We're hoping within the next year to 2 years that we'll be able to come to the board and hopefully be able to do a capital project and start talking about it. These are things that we'd like to include in there as well. The timing pool scoreboard needs to be replaced in the pool. and some of the pool lockers need to be replaced. There's some maintenance that we have done, but some of them have rusted out, and we, just from the pool environment there. The track needs to be resurfaced. I know the track was done 10 years ago through another capital project, but there's some major resurfacing that needs to be done there as well. And just general field house repairs. In that same capital project, we had done some major work on the side, on one side to the bathrooms and that area, but the field house, we did some locker repair and some replacement last year, but there's a little more major repairs that need to be done there. And just some lovely pictures of our athletes. Does the board have any questions on the budget or the programs, or? Yes.
I had a question. The first slide you had up listed the offerings.
Yes.
So it was up real quick, so maybe I didn't hear you correctly. I just want to confirm. So that's what we currently have and what will be offered. There's no real... Are there teams that won't be offered next year that we have now, or are there teams that will be added that we don't have now? Could you just clarify?
Sure. This is the program currently the way we have it, and we're not asking to add or subtract teams, but I think what we wanted to make clear was that just because you see varsity, JV, and modified in some of the sports, you may not see that in 15-16 if participation is not there or the level of play. That would be a call. I know that wrestling at one time we offered JV versus modified depending upon the kids that come out for the team or their age or their ability. And the same thing with lacrosse this year. We're offering a modified right?
Instead of
for
JV.
Girls, yes, instead of JV.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our second presentation this evening is a continuation from last board meeting. At last board meeting, we heard about special education and a plan, and we have a return. They were so popular, they're returning this evening. Mr. Frank Mulhern and Mrs. Nicole Triassi are here this evening to talk about the special education budget.
Well, thanks for having me back. Good evening. The reason these two presentations are separate is because when I'm presenting the biannual special education report, it is not about finance. Although there are numbers in there related to some finance, really the biennial report is to talk about programs, student needs, and trends. Tonight I'm talking about money, okay, and how you expend in order to meet the needs that I described in the last presentation. So there are a few slides here that I'll share with you. The first is the breakdown of special ed teacher staffing by school level, comparing this year to what we anticipate next year. Now, we're in the process right now of looking at all of our projections, and they change as you gather them, but this is our best guess at what the needs are. The bottom line is currently we have 47.6 special ed teachers and projected into 2015-16 with some variations on different levels. We will need 49 teachers in order to meet the needs that are projected based on the IEPs and annual reviews. Related service staff. This year we had 24.4 full-time equivalents in speech, occupational therapy, psychology, social works, and guidance counselors. For next year, we'll have the same number. There's no increase there. Just a reminder, though, that the related service staffing over the last 2 years have reduced prior to this current year by 1 each year, being that last year, going into this year, we accessed a guidance counselor position, and the year before a full-time psychologist position. Teaching assistants and aides, again, this is a numbers game in terms of figuring out what the projections are and what we're going to need to fully comply with the teacher-student ratios on IEPs for next year. Currently, we're at 36 teaching assistants. When we look at the numbers going into 15-16, 43 will be needed. Currently, we have 19 aides. Going into next year, we will need 14. District PPS staff. On this chart, the most interesting item is a CPSE CSE chair. Given the responsibilities that we have, the demands for more rapid production of CSEs, services for kids, timelines, given the increase in CPSE students coming into special education, the great increase in 504s, we need a CSE chair, CPSE chair, in order to manage all of that in 2015-16. Everything else is the same. Out-of-district students, you're well familiar with this, but basically, for the current year, we have 69 total students in out-of-district programs. Going into next year, we project that we will be at 67. I'll ask Ms. Quarteroni for a little help on this, but basically, the cost for special education within the budget is about a 14% rate across the 3 years. Did you want to add?
What I would like to add, so you'll see that the contractual, the tuition for private placement and the BOCES tuition is pretty much the same number across the 3-year period. And I've explained before, and I will explain again when I do the full budget presentation at the end, but we leave the BOCES tuition pretty much flat. We don't know if there would be students that come into the district during the year, so we always leave a little bit extra. Same thing with tuition for private placement. So we checked all those numbers are going to come in under budget for 14-15, so we're proposing to remain them flat just in case.
This is actually the last slide, several years ago when New York State was audited by the federal government and found to be not living up to its role in terms of Medicaid billing, accounting for services. There was a stoppage of how claims could be made. We were part of that. So now we're in the swing of things, and you can see this trend from 2012-13. Our annual reimbursement for that year was almost $37,000. Last year, our revenue was $120,000, and we are anticipating, based on our current revenue, reimbursement, and moving forward, $157,000 for this year. In order to project next year, actually, if you ask me to bet on it, it would be greater than 157, but the conservative estimate would be to leave it flat the way you have it this year, and you'll see as you move ahead. Why would I say it increases? Because we've done a good job of really nailing down our billing process, and we're down to the last pieces of making sure that everyone who needs to be registered under Medicaid, I'm talking about families, are just about done. And when all of those finally come in, we should see a greater increase in revenue there. And this is a big boon to us because we were not receiving much money at all, and this helps to offset some of the costs in related services that we are supplying. So I leave you to any questions.
Frank, a couple questions.
Sure.
Can you give me a feel for number of students requiring your services last year compared to this year, for example? I mean, you got the out-of-district ones, but what about in-district?
In-district, we're down approximately 23. We're at 575 school-age in-district. That doesn't count preschool, which is approximately 89 preschool right now.
What are you predicting for next year as far as in-district students needing services?
Well, hopefully we go down, and I think we will. But you're still going to have a number that is within the 550, 575 range.
Okay.
Your preschool is going up, though. The trend on them is going up, and has been, and a 33% increase over the last couple of years.
Could you maybe explain a little bit more about the rationale for the increase in teaching assistants and the decrease in the aides? I mean, I was assuming maybe it was based on an increase in students, but that doesn't sound like it is. So.
It's really based on the fact that this year when we did the special ed report, we matched the class size ratios to what Commissioner's Regulations Part 200 require. So we had a couple of classrooms that we were offering services, but on our IEPs we weren't as clear. So we'd have a 10-1 intensive literacy class at the high school. It really needs to be a 12-1-1. Now, how you deploy your teacher and teaching assistant in that is based on how many students you have. So if you're in a 12-1-1 class, it's a 1-6 ratio. So on the 7th child, you really need to have that additional TA. These numbers actually follow strictly, regardless of enrollment in the classes, what those TA numbers would be. You might find yourself going into the year saying, we're packed, I need all of them. You may find yourself going into the year saying, we have several classes that don't require it, and it would shrink that number of 43 down. But it gave you the maximum number based on IEP, state ed regulated teacher, student, class size ratios.
Okay, thanks.
Somehow, Bill, I thought you were going to ask about Medicaid. That was always your question.
Why is there an increase if our enrollment's going down for classified students? Why is there an increase at the elementary level for the justification of 2 teachers?
We, first of all, if you see it, part of it is a reduction at the high school. So we look at what we have, we try to shape it, and what can we reduce, what can we leave, what do we need to leave the same, what do we need to increase. When we look at the programs and the needs of kids on the elementary level, we're seeing different configurations. Remember, we're in a process of trying to move our classes also to single grade classes rather than what we had in the old days, K2 special ed, self-contained, 3, 4, 5. We've done a great job of that. But as Common Core has come up, as the demands on getting kids to pass their tests, to learn more, we've moved away from that. And that's been a trend that was hopefully noticed in the report. The other thing is that we anticipate that there may be, a need for more kids in the spectrum or MAPS or ADL section. Right now, we're on a variance with one class. We're recovering more than 3 grade levels. We will not be able to carry that into the coming year, and that may obligate us to create another classroom. So part of it is that. I don't think it'll be absolutely defined yet, down to the nitty-gritty. We're almost done with at least a portion of our annuals that will tell us. In addition, we were proposing the additions based on what we think will happen. In the district, as you may know, Dr. Walkley has a consultant who, in special education, who is also working, interviewing our staff, looking at classrooms and things of that sort. So we're meeting with her actually next week, and we wanted to give her the full picture of what we think the implications of our numbers are, and that's what you see here today.
So this is going towards getting the self-contained classes to be single grades? Is that?
Part of it is that.
Okay.
Part of it is that, yeah.
And just for the related services, I see that there's no increase, but are we meeting all the students' needs, or do we have to contract out because we're not meeting any needs in any particular area because of the amount of related service that we have? So is our staff able to cover all the mandates at this time, or do we have to contract out any services?
We're contracting out on the physical therapy. You notice that's not listed there. Mm-hmm. And so we're meeting all of the students' needs through a contract. That is being examined as to what's the cost benefit there in terms of having a contract versus trying to hire someone to do the job. I think it's at that cutting edge. I would hope that that would be examined. As far as evaluations, that was always our issue, and when we lost the psychologist, we felt that would be a problem for us. I think it is still a task that needs a lot of management and careful planning, and it's very, very difficult because when you add initial evaluations that you can't predict onto your triennials, you get numbers that you might not be able to reach with the 6 that you have. We do contract with BOCES for a portion of that to be covered, usually at the second half of the year. So right now, there is a BOCES contracted service to do some triennial evaluations, but the rest of it is on our staff.
Is that cost less than if we were to have another psychologist?
At this point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Can I have a motion for executive session?
Motion to adjourn to executive session to review the employment history of a particular individual, and the board will return as soon as possible.
Comments or questions?